from their encounters with races from other planets. The information is the activation. Let's awaken this world together. We are the forever students, and we will not be silent. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. It's pretty wild. Welcome, everybody, to Full Spectrum Universe. My name is Rob Yox, and we are the Embattled Broadcast. And we've got a new graphic for the beginning of the show. Our mission here on Full Spectrum Universe is, and welcome first off, subscribe, please, and explore humanity's potential. Studying the past as we know it, right? Remaining within this present. Why? So we could dictate the terms of our future. This is Full Spectrum Universe in its epitome. We are in full and bright energy. We're coming through hard tonight. It is an exceptional evening. You might ask why. It's because we're right here. We're all together, and we're exploring what it means to be human, what it means to be light-bodied, what consciousness means to everybody. So please help us awaken the world. It is our duty to do this together. Like, share, subscribe, and I mean share this on every platform possible. Why? Because we are user-friendly here. We stay within the confines of censorship. So nobody will ever get in trouble for posting episodes of the show. It's one of the reasons why we do it that way. We do have uncensored content that either goes to Rumble or it's a backstage viewing of it. I'm so excited to be here tonight. I'm in rare form. So as you can see, my brain is going 1,000 miles a minute. I want to say hi to a couple people in the chat. We've got Amanda, we've got Jay Rocco, we've got Chantel, Andromeda, and Charles so far. As people are piling in tonight, we're going to be talking about part 2 of what we left off with before we basically explained what the archetype is. Tonight, we're going to give examples, and the examples are going to show us how humanity has been cultivated to know that they have no potential when it's absolutely false, and there are entities at work at the higher echelons of this dimensional reality as opposed to the next, and so on and so forth after that are pulling the strings of some of the people that we see in power today that would call themselves human but really are working for an agenda that is not a human first agenda. There are such agendas like the transhumanist agenda, the eugenics agenda. I mean, there's a one world order agenda. We know all of the agendas, right? There are cultural agendas, there are political agendas, and all of those ideologies are for one purpose only: to give control to somebody else, to not control our own future, to not be able to dictate those terms, which is why we made that cool little graphic in the beginning. We might play it again at the end, but this is what we're fighting against. We are the bearers of light who move into this new reality, this new paradigm with all of our energy, with all of our collective knowledge, and awaken those around us and be the change that we want to see everywhere. So welcome, everybody. We have a great show for you tonight. As always, we have a lot of information to get to, so I'm going to jump right in. I know we're only at about 4 minutes, but also put your questions in the chat if you'd like at any time. Make them caps lock. I will star them and go back to them in between segments here. Also, super chats are open. We have super thanks open if you're feeling inclined to donate to the broadcast. That is how you do so. And when you do that, all proceeds go back into the broadcast itself to get us more information behind different paywalls of info to bring to the people. Now, one of the things we're also going to be displaying this week is we're going to be setting the next event, the next energetic workshop, which is going to be absolutely pivotal in your ascension, aka your awakening. Right? What that next workshop is past life traumas, present life traumas, and potentially future life traumas. What does that mean? That means we're going to identify them. We're going to show you how to overcome them. And we're going to show you how to recognize what may be a potential one so that you can either avert it or get past it. There's so much to talk about when it comes to our multi-dimensional selves and using all the tools in our arsenals to make sure that we are the most refined and best version of ourselves. That's our purpose here as well, to help everybody. I see Prince has made it. Welcome, Prince. Good to see you again. It's been a minute. And let's get into the information this evening. So first and foremost, the title page, of course. And there's one slide you're going to see. It's a different color than all the rest. That is a slide from the last show that we did not get to yet. It'll be a yellow slide. And it's absolutely important that we go over that as well. So the 22,000 year archetype that has held humanity down, part 2. Now, there is a caveat to this title. Humanity is being held down presently, but there are certain ones who are breaking the shackles and achieving the higher modalities of who they are and getting themselves into a position where this is no longer a factor. But for those who are still not at that level, we need to get this information out there to help those people wake up and show that it is not just them being stuck in a 9 to 5 or a routine style of life that is keeping them impacted. It's them not exploring themselves. The understanding is just as important as the understanding. And when we go into ourselves and figure out who and what we are and our purpose here is when we truly achieve a greater understanding and awareness of everything around us. The universe is us. We are the universe. Everything is synchronized, everything is cyclistic, and everything is connected. We are all one. You hear that everywhere, and it's true. Now, we're going to get into a little bit more when we get down the line about some of the things that have actually gone crazy with me this week, because I think it's important to talk about it. And I had a moment a couple days ago where I was getting ready for work, and I'm going to bring it back to me for a second. And outside of my window while getting changed, there are birds chirping all the time. So sometimes my wife will be sleeping and I will tell these birds, quietly, like, hey, man, come on, move on. My wife's trying to get some sleep. But this day, I felt something different about, I guess, the outside world as I was getting ready to go and venture in it. And I look out the window, and directly outside the window, a bird decided to perch down and look through the window directly at me. And while I could tell it was smiling at me for some reason, it caught me off guard. And I was like, this is pretty wild. Like, so I'm looking at this bird, I'm doing little noises to try and get its attention. And it looked at me, it was hanging out for about 30 seconds and it took off. So I'm like, that was pretty cool. Maybe it's nature trying to give me a sign, or, there's a lot of different avenues I could have looked at. And then about 2 minutes later, a second bird did the same exact thing and caught my attention. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, that is definitely some sort of sign to get back to nature. There's some guardians that are watching over me, and they came by to show me that they were watching over me. I mean, there's so many avenues that I can go on with this story, but essentially what it was to me was it was the animal world and nature connecting to me in that moment and saying, today is a day that's going to be a good day one, but you're going to be reflective today. And when I reflect on that day, there was a lot of laughs, a lot of smiles, and actually a few people approached me about my second job, which is this. And I got to explain fully what we do here, right? And it was like in such an unbridled and passionate way that these people came back again and again, and they're coworkers, of course, to ask me questions, what I thought about this, what I thought about that, what I thought about this. Because of the way that I explained what we do here the first time, it gave people a an opening, I guess, to question my reality. And to me, that is some of the most powerful connection that you can make with people. And this is also how we spread this message of love. Look, we may not see eye to eye. You may think that I'm a bit of a kook, but here's where I stand on a few things. And it made its way around the workplace that, first it was sort of like a self promotion for the show, which is nice. You get a little bit of that, which people can revert people back to sections of the episodes to get insight into specific things to give them different perspectives on how things are. But truly, what it was a moment where I was connecting with the people around me and we were sharing energy for a moment. And while they may not have believed everything I was saying, they caught wind of who I truly was outside of work, which is something also that's very difficult. While you're in a workplace, there's always a facade you put up, because when you get too far into things, you don't want people to prejudge you, but also that judging sometimes for me, I get lackadaisical with that point, and I kind of just go off the deep end a lot and let people know exactly what it is and how I feel, and maybe there's some decorum aspects that I have to learn a little bit more. But you know, it was an exciting moment, and I thought to myself, what if I could interact with people like this all the time? And I've actually created sort of a mode in myself to start approaching people in that manner. And I think it's helped me connect with a lot more different style of people across my reality and my everyday life. So little things like that bring into perspective what our mission is here, right? So we're all having fun. Let's get back to the info though. So the next slide is going to be the slide that is from the last episode, which that was kind of my opening salvo to understand that things around us become awareness, right? And that awareness helps us dictate how we move through those things. And whether it's events, whether it's people, it's how we maneuver. And this is understanding what we're talking about today and knowing the system of which we are up against helps you to maneuver through that system, right? What's going on, Claudel? What's going on, Sugar Bee? Good to see you. Dorothy, good to see you. Valentina, everybody's piling in. I love it. I love it. Let's get everybody here together to be a community and keep this going. But it helps you to maneuver through these aspects of life that sometimes seem daunting and sometimes seem pedantic when you're going through it all, right? But really, they're avenues given to us by whatever the universe is throwing at us to reach others. We have to utilize those moments, right? So that's part of what we're talking about here. But the connection that we're making within our hidden history gives us clearer insight to our potential, why they would want that to be stamped out, and who we truly are. This is a most amazing time to be alive. And if we don't take full advantage of these moments, you know, it may be a detriment to us in the sense that reaching for connection is a part of who humanity is. It's how we make our you know, it's how we make our connections to the universe is through people as well. So there's a lot to be said here. I'm getting a little bit off track and stumbling over my words because of my excitement, but the first portion of what we're going to talk about tonight is the alien implant aspect. And this is this connection to history. So the alien implants that we talked about the last time carry genetic signatures of their alien creators and are designed by these negative entities to claim their assertion and that they have conquered this planet or region thus far. And that means all human beings, the surface grids, and their assigned territories have those reptilian ownership modes in them, right? Which is why we're seeing some of the conflict across the world right now. And as we move through these conflict stages of shifting timelines to the organic ascension time wave, this lends the aggressive exopolitical strategies in play now, right? That's what it is. And these negative entity factions continue to assert humans as their rightful property. And as they lose access to important black magic grids and reversal networks and Stargate systems, the negative factions are defending what remains the colonized territories within those grids, with the continual threats of specific planetary destruction and harm through electromagnetic pulse weapons, nuclear bombs, just as they did during the Atlantean cataclysm. This is the cycle of it, right? So the situation is similar to the taking of the surface hostages in certain demographics. And this is in order to generate leverage for negotiating their demands during various stages of escalation of warfare. So, as we discussed many times while we're here, when they're losing their power and control over human minds, they are prone to throw temper tantrums and false flag type scenarios. So, this is something we have to be mindful of. Also, mind control programming and their holographic inserts allow consciousness body of the individual to be infiltrated by the invaders through the energetic signatures of these extraterrestrial style implants. Mind control programs are enforced through alien manipulation and their entity attachment and demonic possession. And this is all two sides of the same coin, right? So the energetic signature of these implants will depend on genetic and consciousness relationships that the individual has to that dark entity and has placed the implant in their specific human targets. So many of these entities believe humans are their rightful personal property. And the entities will have specific information from the extra dimensional source of the species that have laid claim to that individual, their family line, their group, and their slave ownership in this lifetime and possibly the next. This is why it's important for us to break this cycle. But to break it, we have to become aware of it. The reason why this critical understanding for those awakening to grasp this is that the microcosm to the macrocosm, or the macrocosm to the microcosm, and as above, so below, humanity cannot be fully freed until the actual source of consciousness enslavement, extended equally to the entire human species, has been lifted and has been at the direction of the more technologically advanced invading anti-human species. We have to awaken everyone to move the entire planet. Now, some of us are awakened now, which means that we are the bearers of light who have been given the mission to awake the others. But the entire planet has to awaken to this so that the entire planet can move into that new paradigm. Some of us reside there. But what happens is some of us are actually diving back and forth between the two, right? Most of us are in the 3D reality, but jump to 4D and 5D reality as we're here. Why? Because what we're doing is we're going up to the next dimensional level to gain energy for ourselves to bring it back to the third dimensional level to help change the hearts and minds of everybody out there, to show them what's truly going on. We go up there to get the information of truth and bring that truth back to the 3D world to use as linchpins that can turn the tide of this reality and bring this 3D dimensional reality into its new paradigm, which is the fourth and fifth dimensional reality. So that's how we do that. That's how we maneuver, right? But to know how to do that, we have to understand the adversary. It's talked about in The Art of War. Great philosophers have talked about it for many a decade, many a generation. Know thy enemy, right? And I see Amanda made a comment here, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Amanda, but we get to this point, right? We get to this point where we're so tired of the 3D reality, which is why when we meditate, we reach for the higher dimensional realities. But what happens is when we are in that mode of being tired, sometimes it's best to take a little bit of like a reprieve or a sabbatical from doing that work to explore the beauties of that 3D reality. And that will give us a little bit more, I guess, patience to be here in this time, in this now, and be the effective change maker that we know we can be, right? Everybody gets to that point. So I don't want you to feel discouraged in any way. We're all here to be a structure for you to lean on as well. That's why this community is that important for everybody. So let us keep going. So as we keep going here, the reason, right, that this anti-human species, and there's a problem of the global human slavery and the ongoing slavery of the entire planet and the natural life is of its forms cannot come to an end until the connection is made with our hidden histories. And that begins with the concealed galactic human slave trade and the current global industrialization scale and the trafficking of human individuals, children as well, and humanity must awaken to the sole reason for widespread ritualistic abuses and abusive networks is that other non-human species that invaded our planet is secretly carrying out within their agendas and has brainwashed and tortured many groups to enforce this agenda, and through interdimensional consciousness slavery conditions as well. So not one of us can live free on the planet until we are all truly freed and the planet is 100% liberated. So when we unite together to build genuine humanitarian organizations to heal the world and its children and to stop them from being abused or exploited, right? We're essentially taking on the spiritual ascension density. And that is, of course, we must unite as the one angelic human species in order to finally stop this ritualistic abuse and sacrifice, I guess is a way to put it, right? So that's sort of the opening to tonight. That's kind of going a little bit of what we're talking about the last time. So now we're going to get to those specific points in history where the implementation of these grids, right? And essentially these moments where these networks were being instilled into humanity to keep them rooted in negativity and not love, to keep them rooted in not knowing their true history or their potential. It was these erasures or these resets that happen that essentially cause humanity to fall in on itself and let these entities take control of everything. Now, whether we want to admit this or not is very difficult for somebody, you know, to truly come to grips with or to admit for themselves. It's very difficult because when we admit this, we admit that there is a power above us, not the power that is showing us the way, which is the God style power or the higher echelons of enlightenment, but there is a dark antithesis to that. And this is why we're fighting on the side of light to bear witness to this darkness and not eradicate it, but take it away from this planet completely. Again, energy, no matter what type of energy it is, cannot be eradicated. It can only be transmuted. So now our spiritual principles are coming into play, right? This is why we're talking about this. So the first one we're going to talk about, which we've talked about at length on this channel, is the Ayani massacre and the Ascension breeding programs. This was the beginning, right? So, with the recent revelations concerning the return of the Atlantean solar dragon, it was registered that the Ayani massacre events began with the capture of this society and its high profile position entrusted to protect the 11th Stargate. They had to destroy this in order to seize major territories within the Atlantean colonies, which was carried out through the ultimate Thothian betrayal. And the deception was carried out by the high ranking Anunnaki, outwardly representing to protect the Blue Flame Melchizedek Laws of One records and a trusted member of the Emerald Order councils, right? And that opened the door for Marduk forces to slaughter them. So Thoth carried out the masquerade until he reached the ascension initiation of the 11th layered flame body, while he covertly formed the Brotherhood of the Snake with the Nuberian Anunnaki in order to gain control over the Emerald Founder records, right? That certain entities embodied and protected. This gruesome event led to them being taken to Nibiru for a complete genetic dissection in order to serve their head, heart, and embodied hierogamic connections to their husbands, through which they utilized specific AI technology to translate sections of these specific holographic plates and harvest coded intelligence from their bodies, which then was entrusted and protected for the 12 Asani tribes, the angelic humans. So they took the Ayani, right? They dissected them, fed them to their husbands, took their hierogamic connections, used the holographic plates, then gave that holographic plate to the 12 Asani tribes, which were the angelic humans, which then would turn war and gave Thoth and Marduk the opening to essentially eradicate the opposing forces so that they could gain control, right? So let's keep going. So this event, right, signifies the universal solar female Melchizedeks, and as once the Thothian Nubians had captured and killed the 11th solar dragon queen of Atlantis with the help of Marduk, the planetary grid network which she protected within her embodied herogamic auric field with her husband collapsed. And as a result, that disposed the when the grid was disposed of and flushed out, it was easy for them to capture this grid. And this also protected the stargates and the global grid system. And this was a fall moment, right? They were gaining control of specific planetary grids to then control the energy of the planet, which gives them, of course, total control. So let me just check the chat again to make sure I'm not missing anything. And, this is a pivotal point. It's a pivotal moment, very much so. So when we get into it a little bit more, we see that and this is all going to connect, right? These records were accessed and translated by Thoth while using Nuberian or Anunnaki technology, and then subsequently repackaged through the release of the Emerald Tablets, which became the basis of many of the Kabbalah's secret society teachings. This set off a chain of events for galactic bartering and slave trade was now becoming manifested as genetic slavery upon the Earth's surface was. So by killing the embodied Ascenti tribes, the Herogamic Magi kings and queens that were protecting the planetary Templars or the Stargate systems were now being eradicated. And this further led to the hunting down of the Ascentis, the Celtic Grail kings, and the line massacres, as well as Viking invasions and the creation of the imposter Elohim groups pretending to be the cosmic Elohim mother and father that later founded the base 10 Kabbalah systems for their preferred Luciferian bloodlines. Then they called themselves the chosen ones. Does that make sense to everybody? This is all how it gets crazy, right? This is where things start to get wild. And this is where they implemented their systems, first on an energetic level, then on a physical level. Then on that physical level, they changed the spiritual statements or the spiritual embodiments of those peoples. So this is another reason why I have such a hard time believing that the Anunnaki are coming back now and they want nothing but the best for us. Right? If we look at the history and history repeats itself, could this be another play for them to gain control again by putting our misgivings into trusting them and giving ourselves over freely for their enslavement once more? This is why it's so difficult for me to get behind that, right? It truly is. So let's keep going. We're going to breeze through this a little bit more now because I see we're already running low on time because I ranted a bit too much, but my bad, everybody. We'll get it. We'll get it. So the next portion of what we're talking about here is the Celtic massacre, right? And this is essentially that all humanity is living in the middle of spiritual warfare. We know this, right? We know this. And it truly is a moment, right? Because there's territorial battles, final conflict for gaining control of the planet, and humanity in the timelines in which the primary issue for the future of the human race is hinged upon choosing planetary liberation or human enslavement. These humans appearing Anunnaki, right, and draconian hybrids were conditioned, or like the humans that they look human, but they're really Anunnaki and draconians, They implanted and prepared the primary Luciferian bloodlines that would be assigned to the highest echelons of the global planetary leadership and would come to be known more specifically as the Thothian Leviathans or the Illuminati bloodlines of today. Right? This is how it all connects, how it all comes together. And there's everything from the regular Knights Templar through history to the Luciferian Knights Templar. They have their own parallel for just about everything, right? Sickening. So the next step is the Celtic massacres and the Druid sacrifices, right? And absolutely, Beatrice, absolutely. Not all people are good. And we know that. Some people have given themselves freely to the other side. But that's okay. Our side is always going to win, and it's always been meant to win, right? Sit on that for a moment and think about it. It's bad, but there's a lot of people working for the enemy, and truly they don't even know they're doing it, right? Those are the ones we want to wake up. So as we keep moving forward. So once the Emerald Founder records were stolen and extracted, right? The Inner Circle Melchizedek Templars were executed directly after that. And they were also taken to Nibiru for genetic experimentation and breeding programs. The Thothian Luciferian agenda continued to organize genocidal campaigns to eradicate the Celtic kings and the Grail DNA, because the Asani kings then became the Celtic kings, right? And eventually they would become something else, but we'll get to that in a moment. And they would gain control of this DNA, which then would gain control over the Melchizedek Christo dragon teachings from Atlantis. Thus, the Celtic Druid Grail bloodlines organized themselves and went underground to hide and protect the genetic records and the Gnostic wisdom of the original Magi Grail kings, as well as ancient texts and many, many other things, right? These are the ancient builder races from the god worlds, which recorded the mechanics of creation within those Emerald Founder records, which held highly coveted secrets of the Magi Grail kings and the Solar Dragon kings, and of many assorted Diamond Sun lineages as well. These genetic bloodlines were alchemically conceived and genetically mastered to be benevolent leaders and guardian Grail kings to protect and preserve the earth in order for her to fulfill her emerald crystal heart position to activate the divine plan of universal ascension during the specific window of the 2012 timeline, which changed, right? So the authentic Celtic Ascian groups from Hyperborea, we talked about the Hyperborean massacre, were the progenitors of the original Nazarene Christos teachings and preserved the knowledge of the original Diamond Sun Templar locations. The male and female Christos Sophia lines, the historical and angelic human genetic records for Earth while it was under this dark siege. So, a lot to think about here, right? So, where does that lead us now? That leads us to this moment where the law of one holds the information describing the genetic records of the 12 Asani tribes and gives detail about humanity's true historical origins and biological ascension capability, which is the biggest part of that, is the last couple of words: the true historical origins and biological ascension capability. The Celtic Druid Church, or the Celtic Church, held this specific knowledge of achieving the embodiment of sacred herogamic union to evolve into the cosmic Christos mindset, which is to unite, marry the intergender principle throughout creation, and bring celestial music of the Christos Sophia from the heavens into the earth realm. The cosmic Christos Sophia dragon teachings were first taught by the Asani tribes, carrying the lineage of the original Celtic church onto the powerful ley lines around the Mediterranean basin. Now, if we go to regular history, which is the history taught in history books, right? We know that the Celts had an amazing connection with the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians were essentially the epicenter, besides Egypt and of course Greece and all those places. They were like the spiritual Gnostics of the Middle East or of the Mediterranean basin itself. But because these two cultures had such a great connection, and there was really there was like no way to really like see that connection unless you knew this. People would look at these two connecting bodies and say, what the hell were they so like enthralled with each other for? This is why. This is why. They had ancient knowledge that they were sharing amongst each other, which in turn empowered both cultures, right? So it's wild to think about this. It truly is. It truly is. So as we keep going here, right? We're going to talk about a little bit more now, which is the Saxon Thoth Viking invasion. So now this all happens. And there's a lot of different systems that these Hyperborean lines and the red haired giants from Hyperborea were cast into somewhat of an exile. And the seventh dimensional portals on the north tip of Scotland, Greece, and Peru basically served as major breaching points for, at first, the body embodiments of light, but then later would be the embodiments of darkness once they were sacked and taken over, right? So this moment of the Viking invasion, the Saxon, is when Marduk appears to have been this most brilliant military strategist working in collaboration with the intruder Thothian groups and the Nibiran serving his own satanic Black Sun lineage interests, and thus organized several surface assaults via weather cataclysms and the Great Freeze while using electromagnetic beam weapons to target the United Kingdom landmass. The beam weapon technology was used to cause the grid to collapse in several areas in order to flush out and expel the remaining Celtic Grail lines that were standing as the last line of defense protecting the specific 11 Stargate network. This became meaning behind the 1111 Ascension codes, right? And as the family of Michael and the Universal Melchizedek family gathered from the 1111 protective energetic barriers with their unified consciousness bodies in order to protect and defend the Avalon Stargate from total alien invasion and infiltration. When we see 1111 repeatedly on the digital clocks, this is designed to activate our core spirit memories during the ascension cycle. This acts as a cellular alarm to remember the Melchizedek's last stand for human freedom when we were invaded at the Avalon or Avion 11th gate, and awaken into our higher spiritual expression so that we can support the ascension timeline for reclaiming planetary liberation. Now, sadly, they were defeated and captured. And this is what's called the Michael Wars, or the Aldebaran and Pegasus constellation, right? This is from there as well. But this is the defeat which led to the creation of the 11th dimensional Typhon tunnels and the Dath systems. And it appears that this is when Thoth, a former Emerald Guardian, was betrayed by Marduk, and he was captured and ritually abused in such a way that his organic 11th dimensional consciousness body was inverted into this Typhon tunnel system. His brain and entire consciousness were uploaded into the AI machinery, and he severed from his female counterpart, and he became the AI hybridized creature enslaved by the Black Sun forces to carry out their agendas, and were directly competing with the Anunnaki lineages of Nibiru. So, yeah, right? He betrayed humanity. After he betrayed humanity, he fought for a while against us, then was simulated and used as a linchpin for Marduk to regain the control that Thoth once had. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes. The bad are not just fighting the good, the bad are fighting each other, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. So, as we keep going into this, which we're going to try and get to more as we go through this, is this moment. And this picture is representative of what you're hearing right now. So Marduk and his Black Sun negative forces subsequently cultivated the seeding of several Antichrist armies on the planet within the Nordic regions, which became known as the Viking races. Developed through warring cultures with the blood sacrifice ideology, they were manipulated to hunt down the Aryans and the Ascension tribes in their effort to completely eradicate any remnants of knowledge of the Melchizedek Christ teachings. This is of the law of one, right? So they were carried down from the Atlantean histories. These earlier Viking invasions were used to subvert history by concealing the true identities of the Celts and the Druids throughout Ireland, where they were falsely accused in written records of being barbaric savages when describing the bloody carnage that went on during these invasions. But it appears these identities have been swapped out in the history books as the Celts and the Druids were purposely made to be targets of character assassination campaigns through assorted falsified histories used to cover up their important connections to the Atlantean histories. Crazy, right? Anyway, as we keep going here, now we're going to talk about the imposter Elohim groups. The black goo is a portion of a higher entity that has been There are so many different versions of the black goo we could talk about too. We're talking about black goo on a technological level. We're talking about black goo on a spiritual level. I believe that this is the genetical coding of an ascended master that wasn't fully brought to physical form. And it's one of these negative or inverted ascended masters that they use to basically cultivate nature to their whim. So, because black goo can be absorbed by clouds, and when it's absorbed by clouds, it's sprinkled all over creation. It's a crazy, crazy thing. I mean, black goo, we can go really far into the black goo, but as we keep going, let's keep going. So, with the fall of Atlantis and the Ayani massacre, right, and the Mua and the Kauai, the subsequent events leading to the Atlantean cataclysm, and some of the Elohim Anu Melchizedek groups digressed into the control of the alien hybridization agendas with the invading Balaalian entities and Thothian Luciferians. So as a result, they became integrated with the fallen identities or entities that served the Luciferian covenant. Thus, the Elohim references that are made in the Torah, the Talmudic literature, or in the esoteric Kabbalah teachings in the religions are sourced from the fallen Elohim hybrids integrated with the Balaalian and Luciferian factions that gave the artificial tree of life or the base 10 math Seraphoth teachings to the Semitic races in the Middle East. These are the imposter groups that have been exerting their control over the land of Canaan with the blood sacrifices of the Christos races. They were referenced as the Elohim gods in the texts written for generating consciousness slaves within the negative entity patriarchal slanted organization and organized religions that rejected the cosmic sovereign law of one, but hijacked the language adopted by these entities of trapped Elohai and Elohim into the higher dimensions. So there is a whole different area when it gets to that. But this is pretty much all we have on the presentation side of tonight. So these are the points in history where certain entities grabbed a foothold of these systems and energetic grids and these specific entities themselves to impersonate them, but to also act as their counterbalance. This is one of the things that awakening is showing us is that when we start to see past the ideological differences of each individual human, or cultural differences. We see underlining facts of a unity of all races and all cultures on this planet. And we see a common enemy. Now, a lot of people will use these types of scenarios to create division. I think that this could be a big foghorn to bring people together, right? What we're talking about here is an enemy that no matter what you look like, no matter what you practice, still has control over you. And to live free and sovereign is the goal. So to recognize that would be to bring all of these different types of people together to get all of those cultural perspectives, because the collective is going to be such a superpower that these entities will never stand a chance. And with the help of the higher realms and the angelics, we could be all free of this hating each other, hating one another, jealousy, anger, and reside within the place where love is the key. Now, I'm not going to rant on much further because this information is packed and it's activating as we hear it right now. And I don't want to take away from that by putting my commentary onto it. So, with all that being said, please like, share, subscribe, right? Leave a comment when this is finished. If you feel like donating, super chats are open. We appreciate it. Just keep a lookout for the link for the next event. It's going to be $25 a ticket with a 10% off promo code, as it always is. I love you all, and with every fiber of my being in the depths of my soul, within the far reaches of my consciousness. I love all of you. Spread this out. Spread this information to everybody you know. It could be the moment that humanity has been waiting for, right? Because if not us, then who? We are the ones that we've been waiting for. And the information is the activation. We bear the light. We are the torch carriers into this new future, the human future, where we dictate the terms, nobody else. I'm Rob Yox. This is Full Spectrum Universe. We love you. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode. We'll see you next time.